Good morning. I'm Chris Jansing. Tonight, Texas will almost certainly give Mitt Romney the delegates he needs to become the Republican nominee for president. Romney only needs 58 of the 152 Texas delegates to reach the magic number, 1144. But he's not in Texas tonight. This afternoon, Romney will be in Colorado and then later in Las Vegas with Donald Trump. The businessman and reality show star still stirring up controversy, insisting just this morning he's not sure if President Obama was born here.
It all wouldn't matter, except if you're born in a foreign country, you're not allowed to be president. So, this is a minor detail. I'm not fanning flames. This is something that came out last week. A lot of people are questioning his birth certificate.
I want to bring in USA Today's Washington Bureau Chief Susan Page and Roll Call's Associate Politics Editor David Drucker. Good morning to you both. Good morning, Chris. Susan, good morning. How do you let a guy front a $2 million fundraiser who thinks that the President of the United States is illegitimate, that he was not born in the United States?
I think it's kind of a mystery, especially for a candidate whose task now that he's a Republican nominee is to reach some independent voters who are going to find this extreme, outrageous. I mean, President Obama is perfectly clear he was born in Hawaii. So the only advantage I can see for Mitt Romney is that it helps him raise money. Donald Trump is helping him raise money, but I do think it comes at some considerable cost to Mitt Romney as well.
The Las Vegas Sun got a hold of some internal campaign documents at the reception tonight. The campaign's goal, as we said, is to raise $2 million. $675,000 is already pledged. People keep asking why, as we are, why Mitt Romney wants Donald Trump around. Is it as simple as money, David?
Pretty much. The president is going to raise a lot of money, and Mitt Romney needs to compete. And I think what we've found over the years is that a lot of us do a lot of talking about this person helping this candidate raise money and this kind of weird person helping that candidate raise money, and voters tend not to care. They know that it takes money to win elections, and unless somebody is really extreme and outside of the mainstream, it doesn't really matter at the end of the day, and it doesn't affect a candidate's prospects. And in the wider world, Donald Trump is seen as an entertainer and a businessman, and that's about it. So I think Mitt Romney's made the calculation that this is about raising money, and he does need it to compete because the Obama machine is well funded.
Well, the Obama campaign has put out a new video. Let me play a little clip for you. Do we have it? They're gearing it up. They're going to roll it any second now. There we go.
I have read about him. He's an Arab.
No, ma'am. No, ma'am. He's a decent family man, citizen that I just happen to have disagreements with.
Why doesn't he show his birth certificate? He doesn't have a birth certificate.
I guess, Susan, the question is, does Mitt Romney have to say something stronger than what he said, which is basically, a lot of different people support me. I'm happy that they support me. I don't agree with everything all of them believe.
I suppose that Mitt Romney could say, John McCain really stood up to that woman, and look what happened to John McCain in November. It didn't exactly do much for him in terms of getting votes. But, maybe Mitt Romney is doing this because it's May. It's not September. A lot of voters, hard for us to believe, a lot of voters are more concerned about their summer vacation plans than they are about what's going on in the presidential campaign right now. But I think it would do Mitt Romney some good with independent voters for him to seem more willing to stand up to the far right in his own party.
There is, I think all this really escalated a lot, obviously, over the weekend because of a kind of feud between Donald Trump and George Will. Here's how it started.
The cost of appearing with this bloviating ignoramus is obvious, it seems to me. Donald Trump is redundant evidence that if your net worth is high enough, your IQ can be very low and you can still intrude into American politics.
And then Trump tweeted back, as he is wont to do, quote, George Will may be the dumbest and most overrated political commentator of all time. If the Republicans listen to him, they will lose. I guess going back to your point, David, I've never really believed that very many people, in terms of surrogates or supporters, help you win votes as a candidate. I'm not so sure that somebody that you're closely aligned with doesn't hurt you.
Well, I think the evidence is that, in general, it doesn't hurt you. It also, by the way, doesn't help you. So a lot of attention surrounds somebody's supporters and what they say and what they've done in the past, and it tends to be much ado about nothing. Look, there are exceptions. If you have a supporter who's an overt and outspoken racist, for instance, you better distance yourself from them and do it fast and sever all ties and give back all of the money. That's one example. But other than that, you know, one thing I'll say for Donald Trump, it was George Will who said Republicans might as well write off the presidential race and move on to congressional races only. So while I do think George Will is a bit smarter than Donald Trump gives him credit for, not everything he says is perfectly true.
Let me bring in Peter Baker to this discussion. He, of course, is the White House correspondent for the New York Times. Peter, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
You wrote this great piece, Obama finds campaigning rules clock. Between working and campaigning, the president sometimes has 19-hour days. He reads letters from regular people for inspiration. And a trip to Iowa last week got him really fired up. Tell us a little bit about Barack Obama, the campaigner.
Well, he's sounding a little at times like the outsider of 2008, or at least trying to. And what he's trying, obviously, to do is recapture a little of that magic. He says at these campaign stops, I still believe in you, and I hope you still believe in me. And he's testing that proposition because a lot of, obviously, his supporters have been disappointed over the years, haven't felt that he's lived up to the promise. He's trying to sort of get them fired up, to use his phrase, all over again. It's a tricky proposition for an incumbent president, of course, because you have a record to run on at this point, and you're no longer sort of the untested new flavor that you were as a first-time candidate in 2008.
And you not only have a record to run on, but you're also leader of the free world. You also have a full-time day job, which is to be president of the United States. How's he balancing that?
Well, not surprisingly, in an election year, the campaign seems to flavor a lot of things, even things that are, quote, official events. Last week he had the NATO summit in Chicago, agreed with NATO leaders to begin transitioning in Afghanistan next year, and within days you began hearing about that on the campaign trail and fundraisers as a talking point. He goes to give a commencement address at the Air Force Academy, of course an official event for any commander-in-chief, but part of his speech is addressed clearly to the Republican argument that he doesn't believe in America, because he's trying to rebut this notion of American decline. So, the campaign at this point is beginning to seep into everything, every part of the conversation at some level or another.
Yeah, we heard it a little bit yesterday when he was speaking at the Vietnam Veterans Memorial in what I thought was a terrific speech. This is a game of inches, always, and we're in a close presidential race. How is he at playing to a specific audience? I was thinking about in front of wealthy donors in California. He wouldn't talk about, he wouldn't jab at Romney's personal success the way he would do it, say, in Iowa.
No, that's exactly right. Of course, the sort of the class elements of his speech, are toned down when he's in these very ritzy elements. Not surprisingly, I suppose. He does have sort of a different message for different audience approach at times. Some analysts would tell you that he's risks being too scattered in that regard, but his people feel that he's able to talk to various elements of his constituency: young people, Hispanics, African Americans, wealthier donors, and provide a textured and nuanced message to each of them. Mitt Romney, by comparison, seems to have a much more, single focus that he pitches at different stops along the way. Is
your sense of it, David, that he is a very different person in the White House than he is as a campaigner?
It's hard to say. I mean, governing and campaigning are two different things. Campaigning, you get to say whatever you want. You provide a lot of high energy, and that is what you try to get to in order to excite your party, excite voters. Governing is about difficult choices. Nothing is good, and nothing is going to come out exactly the way you want, and there are roadblocks everywhere you go. So I think we have seen that Barack Obama, the 2008 candidate, was much different than President Obama, the governing president in the White House, and I think we'll sort of see that dichotomy as the campaign progresses this fall, where at times he has to make difficult choices in the White House. Well, on the campaign trail, it's all wine and roses, if you will, and everything's going to be fine if you just give me another 4 years.
Yeah, meantime, Susan, in the Washington Post, Philip Drucker argues that Mitt Romney is kind of this unlikely standard bearer. Of course, he's a Mormon New Englander in a Christian conservative party that's rooted in the South. But he also argues that the bruising primary has turned him into a formidable opponent for Barack Obama. Do you agree?
Oh, I